That will never work. You can't publish that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing you can do. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn to spell? Stop. Be happy. While you're don't bother me. I've seen better people. Do you really want to? And my third grade. Give it up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey, we made it to double digits. Outstanding. Hey, this is Paul Sading, and you're listening to Horrible Writing, episode 10. Did it? Didn't think it was going to happen. It is. Literally, I'm speaking words. I'm moving air. I'm vibrating air into a microphone. It is happening. We are doing episode 10 of Horrible Writing. How are you doing? So, I hope you're getting everything you need out of this show. I'm enjoying it very much. Very, very much. Is this an enjoyable experience for me? And I hope it is for you. I'm starting to get more and more feedback on the show, which is great. My conundrum comes from the fact that almost, 98% of the feedback I get about the show is from men. And I know I've had a number of women tell me they were going to subscribe and listen to the show. I'm not getting so much feedback. So, which is curious for me because anytime I've been involved in a writer community, it's been mostly women. Women writers, authors, aspiring authors. So this is interesting for me. Ladies, if my voice it grates on you, that I totally get it. Or if the music, you're just not digging the music, totally cool. But I hope I can give value. I hope this show provides value to everyone. I know that's not realistic. You can't please everyone, and nor should we try in our writing, right? But at the same time, it would be really cool to know that that most folks can take something away from this. That's what I hope anyways. And that kind of leads me into the topic for episode 10, about passions. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about as a writer. And I have to thank Nate Vanilla Warford for this. And Nate, if I slaughtered your last name, please know that it's because I'm going to blame my Northeast origins on it and nothing else. It's completely the fault of my upbringing. He is actually an aspiring audio dramatist and found some of my stuff through some of the, looking for audio drama, looking for those fun fiction podcasts to listen to. And he became a patron of Subject Found in Diary of a Madman and Who Killed Julie. So thank you, Nate, for that. But he also, just, having a short dialogue with him, also brought up something that really got me thinking. And I said, you know what? It was his suggestion. You should talk about this on Horrible Writing. And he's absolutely right. It is something that we should talk about and get thinking. He's made me think for a week now about it. I'm not going to promise any epiphany whatsoever. Because I realize not everyone thinks like me. Folks, I'm passionate about this. I am not going to pull any punches. Never, ever in my life have I woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning and been excited. Never. When would that ever happen in any realm of response? It just wasn't a possibility for my entire adult life. I've talked about it a little bit before. I don't go into a lot of personal details, but I didn't really do what I should have been doing in high school. And I had opportunities to go to college, but I would have flunked out. I didn't get any scholarship stuff. My dad, made too much for me to get any assistance, should we say. And I'm not a big fan of debt, so I did the dumb thing of joining. Well, I can't say it's dumb because it's made me who I am. But I joined the military, spent a career in the military, and for 2 decades did not ever wake up being excited to wake up. And that's a pretty lousy way to live life. If you're going through that and you've got this tug of creation pulling on you, if you have the chance to bounce, bounce. It sucks starting off adult life. We all know that. Those of us who've been there, done that. You've got so much energy, so much drive, so many passions. And then you've got the very real considerations of I'm 22 and I have no money and I have to get a car and I've got an apartment, but somehow I need to start saving for a down payment on a house. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. How am I going to save that much money? Yeah, we all get that. If I impart anything on this audience, if you're especially in your early 20s, follow that tug. God, if I could turn back time, right? How many people say that? Every single one of us probably does, except the lucky few. But I was the same place, and I made all the stupid decisions because I wanted to grow up way too fast, way too early, got myself tied down, took on more and more obligations, had a kid, life was over, check. Until, I actually started working my way out of that, which took 2 decades to do. So if I can save any of you from doing that, go explore the world now while you can. Quit that job you hate now while you can, even if you have to room with 8 people in a studio apartment to survive. You can always catch back up again, but you can't catch lost time. You can never catch it. I'm trying my hardest now, which is why I've got all these audio dramas, the 2 novels that are in manuscript form, and outlining, multiple seasons of other stuff to come. I'm trying to catch up, but the real reality is that I never will. Every time you sacrifice those dreams for the mundane, for the expected, you're not going to catch up. It's kind of like for any of those of you who have run in a race, regardless of how competitive or not competitive you are, once that gun goes and everybody starts jogging, there are people who will pull away from the pack. I've never been one of those people. I've always been the pack. But how you watch them and you can, maybe after a mile or so, you hit your stride and you're feeling that groove, but you realize that you think you're catching them and you're only fooling yourself. You're never actually catching that person. Yeah, that's what this is like. So for those of you who are younger and you don't have those things like a mortgage and a family that are preventing you from chasing your dream, chase it. Do it, because you're never catching that person. You'll always be part of the pack. You might pull away from the pack a little bit, but you'll always be part of it. And I don't say that to be defeatist at all. That's not what this podcast is about. At all. We can still do it. I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. And I'm in my 40s, right? But I'm still happier than I've ever been. And that's because I'm investing as much as I can in my passions. And that's what gets me excited to wake up in the morning. So Nate's email to me was introspective, reflective, insightful. He made me think. And I appreciated it. And I appreciate his support. But I also think it's a service to all of us in the creative/writing community to be reminded of or to think about for the first time. When you've got these conflicting passions. Now, like in Nate's example, he's a small business owner that and it's a business he's very passionate about, but he wants to write. And I never had that specific challenge. I never had business that I was passionate about besides my creative pursuits. In a way, I envy him that. That's a nice problem to have in my perspective, because I never lived that. I still don't. I mean, I enjoy my job now. It's if I have to have a job, it's a good job to have, but I don't wake up thinking about my job. I don't rue Friday afternoons knowing that I will have to go 2 long days without seeing my job again. I don't have those emotions. I still can't wait for Friday to get here, and I hate Sunday evenings because that means it's about time to go back to the grind. So, but I have had conflicting passions. I think life is cyclical, and I think there's value to refreshing our systems. And what I mean by that is when you're someone like Nate in that kind of situation, and you've got these multiple passions that are competing for constrained resources, your time and your energy, right? There's only so much of those things that you have to give. You have to make decisions. So how do you go forward? How do you make that decision? How do you determine, it's like picking between your kids. Who do you love more? Maybe you can't do that. Maybe you have competing passions that there is no way you're going to be able to choose between. Well, a healthy way to look at life is to have balance. That balance doesn't necessarily mean 50-50 split, right? So going back to Nate's example, with one of his passions being a small business, I'm going to make some assumptions that small business supports him and the people he cares about in his world, keeps a roof over the head, keeps the food on the table, and maybe once in a while even provides for a little vacation. So the common sense approach is that has to be given more time and more energy. But that doesn't come at a complete cost. It's no absolutism here that the professional small business side of his passion has to override the writing passion. If we don't engage our passions, they don't necessarily ever fully subside. They'll always be there. There'll be that little itch that you can't scratch. Kind of like how you get an itch on the bottom of your foot when your foot is like laced up in a boot or a shoe, and you're in you're in a situation where you can't stop, bend over, untie your shoe, scratch your foot. You know what I mean? So it's that little scratch that just doesn't go away, and it's there. You're constantly cognizant of it. If you don't start satisfying those passions, they're not going to go away. And one of the bad things about that, one of the unfortunate things about that is when you look back on your life 5 years, 10, 15, 25 years from now, are you going to be okay with your future self? Is your future self going to be okay with your former self and letting those passions go unaddressed? Are you ever going to play the what if game? What if I had? Why didn't I? These are things that none of us want to do, part of human nature, especially since the context is something that we're passionate about. This is not easy. Writing. We've already discussed that. Writing itself isn't easy. Creating isn't easy. Releasing those creations on the world is not easy. For many reasons. But not doing it is not the answer. You could arguably satisfy that passion by just writing 100 words a day and never, ever, ever letting anyone in the world hear or see what you created. And you could still be satisfied. Some people are. Some people have such a yearning, such a need to get their stories out there that's unconscionable to just keep a story on a hard drive somewhere. They need the world to hear it. And I understand that. And for someone like that, how can they not work on their passion? They would have to. That would be a person I would predict would live with regrets later in life. We have passions, we have multiple passions, and sometimes those passions conflict. And that's not a bad problem to have. There are much worse problems to have in life. But we have to address them. It's almost like, the 4-box time management chart is almost what I would be doing in a situation like that. And on almost maybe an unintentional subconscious level, I do it myself with some of my passions because I have other passions that I have as well. And maybe on a subconscious level, because I did it for an entire military career, I'm so used to prioritizing that I can now do it almost subconsciously. Writing wasn't something I always gave number one priority to in my free time. I used to be a soccer referee or footy for my overseas friends. And if I had ever reffed a game with Matthew McLean from the Scottish podcast, I would totally red card him because I've seen some of the things he does, and they're horrible. I love you, Matthew. Anyways, so, I was passionate about that until, and I would do writing on the side, definitely. But it was more of those passions, 70% of the time went to refereeing, whether it was actively going to games, refereeing, coming home, working out to be in shape to ref, or researching laws so I could be a better ref. Anyways, 70% of the time doing that, 30% of the time writing. And that but I still had both being addressed, so I was still satisfied. That started to change as I aged, and your body doesn't recover like it used to. And unfortunately for me, back in, 2015, maybe January 2015, I tore my ACL and meniscus playing soccer in an adult rec league, and could never ref again. So it helped me. I had a easy out. It helped me adjust my passions. Now, I'm still passionate about the game, and I was offered paying gigs to be an assessor for referees, but that's again where I had to pull back and do that time task management 4-box chart and prioritize. And I realized the fulfillment would not come from assessing other referees. I loved being on the field around those players. I loved being that part of the game. And being up in the stands just watching referees do that was not going to be fulfilling. Writing never lost its fulfillment. So therefore, the allowances that I made shifted. And more time was given to writing, and thus was really a catalyst to where I am now. In a way, I was fortunate, but it wasn't easy. I really had a hard time for a long time not being involved in the game. And, doing that self-loathing, that pouting universe is unfair bull crap, which, had consequences to my writing because it's just wasted energy. So it did. I still have passions now. I live in Washington State. I'm sorry. You can have every other part of America. This is a place to be. There's no stupid, silly heat and humidity. I mean, there's a couple of days where it gets around 90, but there's mountains, there's the ocean, there's green, there's the high desert in the central and eastern part of the state. I mean, it's just a perfect place for me. I get to Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, British Columbia easily. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I hike all summer and I ski all winter. I get to camp during the summer. I get to get out of the house, which I'm a prisoner to all week long because I telework from home, so I'm locked in my house all the time. And when that free time comes, I must get away. Now, the weekends are times I could use to be doing a lot of writing. For example, I could be much further in, I would already be done outlining season 3 of Subject Found And I'd probably already have a few draft episodes done now if I didn't want to get out and hike and camp so much in the summer. I could be writing the 6th season of Diary of a Madman right now, which I think is the season I'll start taking over writing again. We've got a number of guest writers coming for it, so it's really cool. I could be writing the follow-up series to Who Killed Julie, possibly. But I'm passionate about these other things, and when you live in the Pacific Northwest on the west side of the Cascadia mountain range, you know that between April and October, you better get your outdoor activities done, because middle of October through the early part of April, it rains all the time. So you're not getting outside that often. So I've got these competing passions. I've pulled back enough to do this quick subconscious analysis that this is the time of year to get those things done. So what I do is I make those sacrifices. So I get up early and make sure that I make the sacrifice all through the week so that when the weekends do get here, I can guilt-free get away and get out to those places to enjoy the outdoor time while I have it. That, therefore, both are all passions being addressed. That's what works for me. It may not be the solution for everyone, but what is? What can work? One of the things that always used to bother me as a manager was when employees would bring me problems without solutions. Boss, this is broken. Okay, great. What are you going to do about it? And then they look at you like a deer in the headlights of a car. Unmoving, brain has shut down. Don't do that. Don't be the deer. What can you do? Don't tell me, don't answer the question. Don't answer the rhetorical question, what you can't do. Think about what you could do. If I was sitting in your living room today and you're telling me how much you want to write, but you only got 50 words written all week, well, what can we do? Let's problem solve this together. So that'll be my challenge to you for the week. Send me an email, send me a tweet, send me a Facebook message, and let me know, what can you do to regain that balance? What are your competing passions, and how can you address both of them? Because you can. Where there's a will, there's a way. If you're serious about this, if you really want this, this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the wheat gets separated from the chaff. Remember, the folks who really want this are going to, and the folks who, they think they want it, but they don't really want it, they're going to come up with excuses why they can't answer that question and why that question is unfair. So answer that. Answer it for yourself. If you're so inclined, answer to me. Let me know. I'd be happy to hear. Also, send your horrible writing examples. I know that scares so many people. I don't know if it qualifies as horrible writing. That's not the intent. The intent is to show us something that you've done, then show us how it was improved, and talk about that difference in that improvement. Whether that difference was just to you as a writer, or if it made a difference for someone else. My horrible writing example for the week, very simple. I'm not even going to read it to you because I'm already at 25 minutes. But I wrote a chapter of a book that Subject Found fans might really enjoy. And this chapter was completely brand new. It's an adaptation from the first season of Subject Found. I took that first season and I actually wrote a novel around it. And the story, the novel, the manuscript started out where the podcast did, and I recognized that it didn't work. That's because I'm hoping that there will be people who were, who aren't podcast listeners, but they might actually find entertainment value in that story. And to drop them into the story where I did with the podcast might not be the way to do it, and it definitely wasn't the way to do it. So I wrote I don't even remember how long it ended up being, 1,400 word first chapter. It was a relatively short first chapter. last week I took it to my writers group here in town, and with a few exceptions, one comment about grounding the setting or the character in the setting, everything else was very positive. And some of these folks are multi-time published writers, so they're authors. So it really meant a lot to me. That's my horrible writing example, is to look at that story from the podcast, realize I wanted to make a novel out of it, write the novel, then realize I have to add a chapter at the beginning to really ground the story for people completely unfamiliar with it, and then getting essentially nothing but positive feedback on it, encouraging feedback, really spurred me on to finish reviewing it this week so I can start getting those edits, so I can really start getting that done and maybe actually have it ready by the time the second season kicks off. So that's my horrible writing example. I'm energized. I'm excited about that story. I'm excited about getting it published. And, if it's my mom as the only one who buys it, I can always say I got paid to be a writer. That's a win for me. I don't look to be Stephen King. I'd love to be. Don't look for it. All right, so send me your horrible writing example. Send me your feedback. Send me your thoughts. Please rate this show. 5-star ratings result in digital hugs. Doesn't have to be from me. Can be from somebody you got a crush on in Hollywood. Totally cool. But you automatically get a digital hug for every 5-star rating you leave me. You can find me on Twitter at Writing Horrible or at Paul Sading, Instagram at Paul Sading and Horrible Writing, Horrible Writing Podcast at gmail.com, or simply just go over to paulsading.com and you can find all my stuff over there. Thank you for your download. Thank you for listening. Thank you for anybody who also shares this with your other writer friends or in those writer groups. I really appreciate that. Until next time, keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.